Before we begin today's video, I would like to give a shout out to two of our newest subscribers, Patrick Skramstad and Extas Y. Thank you both for subscribing, and welcome to the family. And now on with today's video. Greetings, my dear viewers. It is I, Drahon, and welcome back to Pathfinder Hero Frame, where we take a look at the different ancestries within Pathfinder 2nd Edition and see what backgrounds and classes best fit with the lore of those ancestries, and see what type of characters we can create from those different combinations. Today we are once again taking a look at Howl of the Wild, the most recent addition to Pathfinder 2nd Edition, with the Merfolk, an uncommon ancestry. Now, this ancestry doesn't really have anything unique to the mythos of Merfolk. The only real difference is that the Merfolk actually do cooperate with land dwellers and initiate trade. Like, say, pearls or special undersea items like rare fish or what have you. And the surface dwellers will in turn give them different things from the land that the Merfolk would want. And this has kind of had a good alliance-ish. Some Merfolk even help out sailors and trade vessels from across the sea to make sure that they are protected. So there is some uniqueness, but not a whole lot is added to the Merfolk of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. With that being said, there are chances that the Merfolk are going to be staunch defenders of their large underwater cities, and will indeed travel to hunt down threats to their cities' lives. Other adventurers could be Merfolk who have been outcasted from their society for one reason or another. And then there are a few Merfolk that are stated to adventure because they are intrigued by the surface world. Now, with that being said, what type of characters can we create with this ancestry? Well, to start things off, as always, are going to be the heritages. We have the Abyssal Merfolk, which are basically your Merfolk based off of the deep sea fish, such as anglerfish, or maybe the black dragonfish, those that have some luminescence to them. Then there are the Carcharodon Merfolk, which are shark-like in appearance. We'll get a little bit more into them here in a moment. Then we have the Pelagic Merfolk. And then there are Reef Merfolk and Sailfish Merfolk. For your backgrounds, it is recommended that you take either the Artisan, Emissary, Guard, Noble, Sailor, or Warrior. But going over the ancestry in full, at least what we got with Howl of the Wild, there are a few backgrounds that I thought would be rather fitting. One in particular is the elementally infused, more specifically infused with the element of water. This is because, according to the lore of the Merfolk, a lot of Merfolk are innately born with power from the elemental plane of water. So it does make sense to have these infused Merfolk. And speaking of the elemental plane of water, there is a versatile heritage that comes from influence from the elemental plane of water, the Undine. And that seems to be a versatile heritage that would be very common among Merfolk, more than would any other ancestry. So that is another thing to keep in mind if you're looking to create your own Merfolk character. Perhaps they were somehow infused with the powers of the elemental plane of water in one form or another. We'll get into more detail with that here in a moment. Of course, we did have a reference in the lore of the Merfolk to Ariel, who was intrigued by the surface world. So it also makes sense that some of these backgrounds would be influenced by the Little Mermaid herself, such as the animal whisperer, free spirit, or even the musical prodigy. Other backgrounds that I found that would work for the Merfolk are the black market smuggler, crystal healer, curandero, deep sea diver, entertainer, food trader, junk collector, again referencing the Little Mermaid, merchant, musical prodigy, royalty, scholar of the ancients, tide watcher, and undersea enthusiast. For classes, it is recommended that you take on the fighter or ranger if you are looking for a more warrior-style Merfolk. Magus, witch, and wizard if you're looking for more of a spell-casting Merfolk. Though I do recommend the kineticist, more specifically the element of water, and the sorcerer. Now, with that being said, I did not have a list of wizard subclasses in this video, as I did not find any subclasses that would specifically work with the Merfolk, because you can use just about any subclass of the wizard for a Merfolk character. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and get on with the very first class, the Alchemist. To no one's surprise, the Chirurgeon and the Toxicologist are the research field that I would recommend for a Merfolk character that uses the Alchemist class. I don't think I need to explain much here. The Chirurgeon mostly comes from the fact that there are a couple of ancestry feats for Merfolk that let you heal. Going off of the legend that I think Pirates of the Caribbean used, and that their tears can heal, which is interesting. I think there was something about the blood of a Merfolk also being able to heal. Either way, let's go ahead and move on to the Barbarian, with the instincts of the animal and the elemental. Now, here's the thing with Merfolk. It states specifically within the description of Merfolk that your lower half is that of a fish. No dolphins, no seals. However, with the Barbarian's instinct and the versatile heritage of the Beastkin, I would say that it would be perfectly fine to base a Merfolk off of the mythology of the Silky, who are Merfolk-like entities that, instead of part fish, are part seal. So that would be something to think about. And of course, going off the elemental instinct, you are going to be infused with the element of water. Moving on to Bard, the two muses that stuck out to me the most were, of course, the Maestro and Zoophonia. Again, going off of the Little Mermaid and them being able to talk to the undersea creatures in that world. And the Maestro more or less plays off of another aspect that the Merfolk of Pathfinder seem to play off of, and that is the mythological siren. So maybe you can even have some of these more animal-based subclasses take on, I don't know, possibly a bird of some kind. That way you get more of those siren features. Moving on to the Cleric. Either one of the subclasses will work for a Merfolk Cleric, as we just talked about. Some adventurer Merfolk are going to be defenders of their communities. They're going to be some form of warrior, a knight, if you will. So the War Priest does make some sense here. As far as deities go, the recommended deities for a Merfolk character are Abadar, Erasteel, more specifically a form of Erasteel who is focused on sharks instead of deer and elk. Gozre, no surprises there. Then we have two elemental lords, at least in classification. I'm going to butcher these names, so forgive me. We have Kelly Zandri and Lacian Asa. Moving on to the Druid class, the Druidic orders of the Animal, Untamed, and Wave would be most fitting here. Going on to Magus. For some reason it recommended the Magus, but I don't know of any hybrid studies that perfectly fit with the Merfolk. The only hybrid studies I can see closely relating to the Merfolk are going to be the hybrid studies of Inexorable Iron, Sparkling Target, and Twisting Tree. Moving on to the Oracle, the mysteries of the ancestors, battle, life, lore, and tempest would make the most sense for a Merfolk character. Going on to Rogue. I didn't want to leave out Rogue, and it definitely fits well with some Merfolk, especially if you're going along with the Outcast route. I would recommend the Rackets of the Ruffian, Scoundrel, and Thief. Ruffian would definitely work for those Carcharodon Merfolk. Moving on to Sorcerer. Speaking of Carcharodon Merfolk, these, like I said, are based more on sharks. And in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, we were introduced to the Merrow, a line of Merfolk who gained shark-like features and a more carnivorous and aggressive appetite because of the Demon Lord that they served and were empowered by. So, for a reference to the Merrow, I would say a Carcharodon Merfolk would probably have the sorcerer bloodline of the demonic. The next weird bloodlines here are going to be Draconic and Worm Blessed. This is in reference to one of the elemental lords that we talked about earlier. This elemental lord is said to take on the form of a brine dragon or a sea dragon. Other sorcerer bloodlines will include the elemental, more specifically water, the genie, more specifically the Marid, as well as the bloodline of the imperial and the nymph. Moving on to the swashbuckler. The styles that would best fit a Merfolk would be the battle dancer, the gymnast, and wit. I don't think I need to explain why any of these would fit with a Merfolk. They dance through the water with grace, after all. Moving on to the witch, our final class of today, and the patron themes that would best fit the witch would be Ripple in the Deep and Wilding Steward. You could argue the Devourer of Decay, mostly for the ability to consume, but I didn't see much of a connection there, as there weren't many underwater entities that actively go after the dead. At least, not anymore. I'm sure there are some ancient predators that did go after the carrion left behind in the sea, but none of today's animals came to mind. Sure, sharks will go after any wounded, but they're not going to actively seek out a dead carcass. But with that being said, that is the end of today's video. What did you think? What type of Merfolk character would you create? Let me know in the comment section down below. And until next time, this has been Drayhan, and I am offline.